Today's scripture reading brings us to Proverbs chapter 30. Proverbs chapter 30 is very similar in respect to many of the ones that have come before this, in that it's a variety of wisdom on different topics throughout. This is different in a couple ways, and that is, number one, the author is different. It's not Solomon anymore. You have Agur, the son of Jacob, is the author slash compiler of Proverbs chapter 30. And then also in Proverbs chapter 30, you'll notice that there is some patterns that are taking place, in that you have, such things as in verse number 18, for instance, and we'll get to this in a second. There are three things which are two wonders for me, yea, four things which I knew not. You see that, three or four times, that type of language. And then the Proverbs will cover not just maybe one or two verses, but maybe four and so forth. So there's, a little chunkier as far as the bits of wisdom addressing a topic, but good stuff nonetheless. So let me give you just a couple from this chapter here. And we see the first thing is verses 1 through 3. The words of Agur, the son of Jacob, even the prophecy, the man spake unto Ithiel, even unto Ithiel and Ukal, surely I am more brutish than any man. That brutish means stupid, and have not the understanding of a man. I neither learned wisdom nor have the knowledge of the holy. So what we see right starting off the bat is humility being demonstrated by Agur. This is pretty impressive, seeing as how God used this man to pen down or compile a book of a whole chapter in the book of wisdom in the Bible. But he is saying, man, I'm just dumb as anybody. But yet God used him in a mighty way to compile this great book of wisdom. He that lacketh wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not. Remember that. You can have wisdom if you want it. All right, so we see, but before honor comes humility. We see that. Second thing, let's look at verses 7 through 9 here. Two things have I required of thee, deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me. This is such really a strange ask that would be better if we were more of this mindset. He's saying, I don't want to be poor, but I don't want to be rich. I mean, how many of you have said that in the past, right? Don't give me riches, Lord. But this is exactly what he's asking for. And he gives the reasons here in the next verse. He says, lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. What he is concerned about is not his convenience, but his relationship with the Lord, because he is concerned that if he gets rich, his relationship with the Lord will suffer. If he is poor, his relationship with the Lord will suffer. In other words, he wants to be in a position of contentment. And that's what you and I should be seeking. Not riches, not poverty, but just to be content with such things as we have. For he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. And we see this generation, a generation being spoken of here between verses 11 through 14. There is a generation that curseth their father and doth not bless their mother. There's a generation that is pure in their own eyes and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There's a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are swords, and their jaw teeth is knives, to devour the poor from off the earth and the needy from among men. So what is this generation that he's talking about? It's a generation of ungratefulness. We see that in verse number 11. It's a generation of self-righteousness, yet they're wicked. They're hypocrites in verse number 12. We see in verse number 13, it is a prideful generation. Verse number 14, we see violent oppression in this generation. What a wicked generation. And I think that it would be fair to say that you would see a lot of these attributes being played out in our generation in America today. And then lastly here, let's look at verses 18 through 20. These are clumped together, and they're all speaking of the adulterous woman. Verse number 18 says, "There are three things which are too wonderful for me, yea, four which I know not." He says, "The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Such is the way of an adulterous woman." So he's giving these descriptions and these illustrations of the eagle and the serpent and the ship and the man with the maid. And he is saying that is like unto an adulterous woman. She eateth and she wipeth her mouth and saith, I have done no wickedness. So what he's saying here, right, when he's giving these illustrations is an eagle in the air or a serpent upon a rock or a ship in the midst of the sea, there is no discernible trace or of their actions and what they have done. And that is exactly the way it is with an adulterous woman, is they attempt to cover their trails, cover their tracks, so they leave no visible trace, and they think that they might get away with such an action. And then later on in the chapter, you see the ants and the conies and locusts and the spiders and the lions and the greyhounds and the goats and the king. Just a lot of stuff there. I hope you spend some time studying out Proverbs chapter 30. A lot of good stuff there. So that is going to do it for Proverbs chapter 30. I hope that this has been a help and blessing to you. And Lord willing, we will finish out the chapter tomorrow. God bless. Hope to see you then.